I kind of want to get into and break down some of the dynamics here, especially and remind people that last week on the show, you had brought us an update about the new prime minister of Haiti, who became prime minister suddenly after having Western support. The U.S. was backing, I believe, what is it, Claude Joseph,
Yes.
who, and then who was the prime minister prior to the presidential assassination. However, at the time, the president had nominated somebody else or appointed somebody else to become prime minister. They just hadn't done like the state ritual part of that whole thing
Right.
to phase out the old guy and bring in the new guy. And so the U.S. actually switched their position and decided to back who was the person that Mosi did nominate before he was killed, Ariel Henry. And Henry, wants to hold elections right away. And I find one thing that's really interesting about that, Will, is that, Henry wants what apparently the West wants. Daniel Larison has this breakdown saying that, the Washington Post and the Western influence are very concerned about making sure an election is held, hopefully in the fall in Haiti. Now, one of the reasons they want that is because they say that will require foreign intervention. And so this is now what the prime minister is saying, the guy who was, assumed power after he was backed by the West. And it just happens to coincide with the Western policy, and a policy that, the war hawks at the Washington Post will believe helped lead to a mission creep U.S. military intervention on the ground in Haiti. And Larison has a great breakdown saying that, look, the U.S. always says anytime there's instability, what we need to do is elections. Elections are going to fix things. I don't know if anybody's lived in the U.S. for the past couple of decades, but it seems that things get a little bit more chaotic and divided around election time. Not exactly, those aren't exactly coming together moments for seemingly any nation, but particularly one which has had, so much foreign intervention and, violent overthrow. I mean, the president was just assassinated in his bed. That's, that signals that, there's a lot of instability in that country. And so, with this, Will, the groups are saying, and Larison is saying, that there may be a need for the country to slow down and try to take account, at least first, of what's broken before you start to nominate a person to fix the country. There's still no, and I'll get into some updates here in a second, but there's still no conclusive answer as to who was behind the assassination of the former president, which
Right.
may be something that the people would want to know about before they decide to go to the ballot box and vote again. You don't want to vote for another president who's just going to get assassinated. You certainly don't want to vote for anybody who either profited off of the assassination or was somehow involved in it. And
Right.
so
Yeah.
these, seem to be important answers. And Will, as somebody who's looking at this, saying, the Haitian police are accusing an American firm of potentially, hiring the Colombians, and maybe the U.S. is pushing to have this election happen before it comes out who all was behind this in the final reports and stuff. I don't know. There's a lot of interesting stuff happening. Well, a lot of questions to be asked. But Larison points out there's civil society groups within Haiti who are pushing back against the election and pushing back against the foreign intervention narrative. And it's just so interesting. Well, in the U.S., of course, if you had a bunch of white people trying to speak for what a community of color needed, they be labeled as racist. But here you have it in an imperial sense, where that they just dictate to this country, you guys need elections in the coming months. That's what we want, and if you guys can't get that done on your own, we're going to force you to take the steps that you need to take with our soldiers to have that happen. And then just one more concerning thing, Will, about this, and there's not a lot of clarification on what the new Prime Minister Henry meant when he said this, but he said that he will work to eliminate all irritants that could get in the way of a new election. And so I'm not, that sounds awfully severe. I'm not sure. Maybe there's some kind of translation issue I'm not catching here, or some kind of Haitian phrase that, just basically means we're going to, tinker around the edges and do what we need to do. But it sounds a lot more to me, Will, like he's saying that he's going to round up anybody who maybe is competition or something like that, or certainly anybody he can. I guess anything on this before we move into the assassination part of the update?
Yeah, I might kind of steal your thunder here a little bit. I don't have any details on this, but I just wanted to sort of piggyback on what you said about just like, taking some time to figure out and unravel this plot, because I think just recently the Haitian authorities are saying that some judge or something may have been involved in the assassination plot. And so if people in the government and high level officials were potentially involved, well, yeah, don't you want to kind of figure out who may have been part of that before you start electing people and putting in people in positions of authority and all that kind of stuff? So I thought that was a good point.
Right. And let's continue on that and talk about that judge, who is a former Supreme Court judge in Haiti who was dismissed sometime recently. I didn't actually find the date. And the dismissal was apparently over dispute with Moïse. And she was, this woman's name is Wendell Conthiot. I'm probably mispronouncing. It's probably French, so I have no idea how to look at it. But Wendell here was serving justice on the bench and was dismissed, being alleged to have been in a previous coup plot or some kind of power grab against Moïse. Now, in fairness, maybe, as a member of the Supreme Court, she saw herself as like, hey, the president's grabbing all kind of power as a checks and balances kind of system. We're supposed to check the president. And maybe that is being portrayed as a coup. I have no idea of how this works or how, accurate the charges against her are. But there's obviously some probably tensions here between her and the eventually assassinated president, though, right? Because he seems to have, at the very least pinned something on her to remove her from her position. If not, she was actually responsible for the plot that he alleges. Now, the police say that the suspected assassins visited her home twice. I didn't get a clarity on how many assassins, if all the assassins met there together, what her home is. Maybe there's a reason, like people entering a foreign country come to. I have no idea why if or why these people would be here. However, all this put together, does seem like fair to say this is a person of interest and somebody to definitely keep an eye on going forward. Although I'm not quite sure this necessarily allies with some of the other speculation that Moïse was possibly executed by the gangs. Now, to talk about the actual assassination itself, we are getting some reports coming from the Colombian soldiers. I think there's 18 of them that are being held, alleged, to be involved in the plot. This from the Wall Street Journal. They're saying that they were fooled, and this seems like a very convenient story to me, Will. But we'll I'll go through, break it down, and we could talk about it after as to what the possible motives are here. But one thing that's important to note is apparently these, I believe 18 men from Colombia. They are apparently former special forces of Colombia. And so that to me made me think that they may have made a little bit more substantial training from the U.S. If it's just a Colombian soldier, well, I find it possible that, they went to some gun cleaning class that was taught by the Pentagon, some kind of you know what I mean? But their special forces, maybe they were even in bed trained with U.S. special forces. So, it's possible that these were deeply involved in the Pentagon and U.S. Special Forces community, something to look at here. But apparently they're all being held in a room that's not very big. I'm guessing the conditions aren't very good. However, as this article points out, it's maybe not a great thing to hold all of your, accused coup plotters in the same room together, because then they could formulate a story. And
Right.
they, I guess, have formulated a story. Well, I shouldn't say it because it could be true. But what they are putting forward is that they were duped. They say that they were told that, I guess it was the American Haitians or Haitian Americans were DEA agents, and they were hired by those DEA agents to go and raid the home and arrest the president. And they made it sound like there was paperwork and stuff official. So,
Yeah.
and I believe these statements are mostly coming through the defense team, which I want to note it was hooked up by lawyers from the Organization of American States, which I would assume is taking the line in the position of the U.S. and the Colombian government, with the U.S. being a major contributor and influencer of the OAS, and then the Colombian government being a main and key U.S. Political ally in South America. So, Will,
Yeah.
anything on here before I keep going with some more details?
Yeah, I just wanted to say this kind of reminds me because we had previously gotten some, at least it was testimony relayed through, I think, a judge or a prosecutor in Haiti, but testimony from those two Haitian Americans. And they had also said that they had been duped in some way. They had claimed that like they thought there was some kind of like court order to go arrest the president. They thought they were going to just bring him back to the presidential palace and all this stuff. And that's I don't know what to make any of this. The involvement of the former judge is also very intriguing because like I wonder if somehow she had or he I forget if it was a he or she.
It's a she.
But she had contacts with some current judges or something, and they did like create some paperwork. Like I don't know. I wonder if like some of the story is actually true and they were actually duped, or how much of it is just sort of cover and just like just their story to get out of it. I have no idea.
Right, and I'm not exactly sure because there's allegations that one of the members of the presidential guard was involved as well, and I'm
Right.
not
Yeah.
quite sure how that plays in with this, the narrative that's being kind of put forward here.
Right.
The other, I guess, a couple of other things to note is there's some concern over the conditions that they're being held in. I mean, it's kind of what you would maybe expect. It doesn't seem like it's horrific, but also nobody would ever want to live there. Nobody's comfortable. Some of
Right.
the people have minor injuries apparently from the arrest. I'm not sure if maybe that came after they were in handcuffs or before, but
Right.
they say some minor injuries. There are also some reports that some of those detained say they signed documents in French and they don't speak French, and
Oh,
so
geez.
it's possible, if we get a statement from the government saying that from this signed statement, the defendants agree to this, this is a reason to be skeptical of that. I think that's about all I have here, Will. This does raise a couple questions that I just wanted to bring up. One
Yeah.
is that have these Colombians worked with the DEA before? It seems all I don't know. I wouldn't believe it if some guy just showed up and said, "I was in the DEA. We're gonna go arrest this guy." No matter how official his paperwork looked, no matter how many badges he had, it would have to be some official walk into DEA headquarters stuff before I think you would maybe buy that. So it seems
Yeah.
like such a stretch that this could be true. Also, there's a huge problem here, Will, with all these guys staying together. Also, the FBI has interviewed each of these people a few times. So I believe that's all the details I have on that so far, other than the Haitian government alleging that the squad worked for the American company CTU, although that company has not put out an official statement yet. And then one last interesting thing to note is, I guess when the Wall Street Journal asked the DEA to comment specifically about the allegations being made, they declined to comment, where in the past they did not denied the allegation. So I'm not sure what to make of all this, Will, but I want to continue to put forward all the details that we're having coming out because this is some place where we could see an American intervention, I think, in the near future.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we already have a Marine contingent, I think, at the embassy there, and yeah, it does sort of seem like that it's heading in that direction. But yeah, I definitely want to keep covering this and just sort of as these pieces keep coming out, it is an interesting story, the assassination.